Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning for those in other continents.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. This is Zaida Mgala speaking, the Director of Uwezo Tanzania and the Chair of East and Southern Africa Hub and the PAL Network. I'm very pleased to really invite you all to this special event when the ESA Hub at PAL Network is launching the ICAN report. I just want to say that as you are already in the platform online, we are streaming this event in different platforms, and I wish to give some instructions. And one, this is a simultaneous interpretation, and as you can see from your screen, the interpretation is available in Kiswahili and Portuguese, and the presentations will be in English, and other speakers as well will be speaking in English. So please note that we are using Germany audio channels as a proxy for Kiswahili. So for those who want to listen in Kiswahili, please click or select the German channel so that you can access the translation in Kiswahili. And please check the buttons at the bottom of the screen. If you need sign language interpreter, we have also organized for that. So please pin the person video on your screen. And for the panelists, we request you to keep your microphone mute unless when you are speaking, and also mute your video when you are not speaking, unless when you are invited to speak, then you can put your video on. We welcome comments and questions in this session. And please, below your screen, you'll see some icons for chat or Q&A section. Please use that to post your questions, and we'll try our best to answer them. And just a hint, when you are posting, please include the following details: your name, organization. Most important, who is the question directed to? We are going to have panelists who are going to speak, so kindly indicate which one you want to respond to your question. And we are also monitoring Facebook Live for questions as well. And for those who don't know much about us, we have shared the advertisement, and maybe some of you are asking what is PAL Network, what is citizen-led assessment, and what is ICAN, and what is this event all about? So today we are launching the ICAN report from the tool that was administered to assess foundational numeracy skills among the children from age 5 to 16 years in the 13 countries who are member of PAL Network. And we are going to hear more about that assessment in a few minutes to come. And for those who are wondering what is PAL Network, this is the network that was established in 2015 to coordinate citizen-led assessment on literacy and numeracy. And the citizen-led assessment initiative is a very unique initiative which involves citizens to generate data on the learning outcome of the children. And this wonderful movement started way back in 2005 in India, and it was initiated by an organization called Pratam. And from our end, having heard about a very good movement that is able to establish the competencies of children in the foundational reading and numeracy skills in India, some of our education experts visited India, and finally in 2009, the expert from East Africa, they were inspired and they started Uwezo learning assessment, which has adopted the citizen-led assessment from Pratam India or from ASA India. And this initiative was led by Uwezo Uganda in Uganda, Uwezo Tanzania, and Uwezo Kenya. For many years, this initiative has brought a lot of commendable outcomes, and the outcomes has really influenced policy and curriculum changes, and it inspired many, many countries to also adopt the citizen-led assessment. And from 2013 onwards, we saw many countries coming, many organizations from various countries in Africa, Latin America, visiting India, visiting Uwezo East Africa, with the aim to also start the citizen-led assessment in their countries. And having seen that now the group has expanded, we are becoming many, we needed to be well organized. And in 2015, PAL Network, or People's Action for Learning, was introduced to coordinate all citizen-led initiatives in the sub-Saharan Africa, but also South Asia and Latin America. And our activities are organized under regional hubs. We have the South Asia hub, we have the West Africa hub, the Latin America hub, and the East and Southern Africa hub, which is launching the report today. So for many years, we have tried to compare our findings across the countries and across the continent. But along the way and through a deep reflection, we realized that we needed a common tool that can allow us to be bold when we are comparing results of our children. And that's when in 2019, the PAL network initiated a tool that was named ICAN, the International Common Assessment on Numeracy, in order to try out and get a tool that can be used for all the countries with the same content to assess our children foundational skills in numeracy. So this event today is organized by the ESA region with the objective to share the ICAN report and reflect on the potential of the tool in monitoring foundational numeracy for ESA region. So ladies and gentlemen, you are warmly welcome. And before I move forward to invite others, I would like to invite the leaders of the citizen-led initiatives in ESA region, especially from the 4 countries that piloted the ICAN tool. And these leaders are from Uwezo Tanzania, Uwezo Uganda, TPC Mozambique, and Zizi Afriki in Kenya, so that we can hear their stories to inspire us about the ICAN tool. So in the interest of time, we cannot have all of them speaking here, but we organized to listen to them through short videos. So may I request PAL Secretariat, please, to show us the video.
After conducting Uwezo for 6 years, Icann brings to me new excitement. It is like reincarnating Uwezo, having a better Uwezo that serves a better purpose. This assessing children and just establishing what children can and cannot do, and communicating this in a simple way is still exciting as when we began first in 2009. When I look at the countries in this region, numeracy outcomes are still very low. We have many math teachers, but we have very few numeracy teachers. Children have to be brought to their level, but then how do we know that what teachers are doing is working? It can only be ICAN.
So for quite some time, we have been trying to compare our assessment findings across the countries and also across the regions. But along the way, we realized that we need a common tool which will help us to do an easy comparison of the findings. And in 2019, we are so happy to see that PAL Network, which is coordinating the citizen-led assessment, came up with ICAN tool, which allowed almost 13 countries from Asia, from Africa, and from Latin America to conduct a common numeracy learning assessment by using the tool.
The International Common Assessment of Numeracy provides our countries yet another opportunity of comparing ourselves on how far we have come with attaining Sustainable Development Goal 4, but it also provides us an opportunity to learn from each other. Much as the assessment that we did initially using this common tool is not comparable across countries, but the districts can be compared. Or as there is a lot to learn from others, and it's very difficult to learn from others if there is no comparative data. So this in a way strengthens us as countries and should strengthen our education systems.
Desde 2016 que a nossa organização, em coordenação com a PAL Network, implementa a avaliação liderada pelos cidadãos. A avaliação liderada pelos cidadãos trouxe para Moçambique o resultado de que as nossas crianças não estão a aprender. A facilidade, no ano passado, realizou a avaliação Icann pela primeira vez. Foi uma avaliação piloto em Moçambique, liderada pela facilidade. Estes dados mostraram que a nossa organização tem a capacidade de gerar dados na abordagem da avaliação dos cidadãos. Assim, esperamos que, com os dados que a ferramenta ICAN apresenta, contribua para aumentar a nossa voz na advocacia de uma educação de qualidade para todas as crianças de Moçambique, principalmente para aquelas crianças que frequentemente são negligenciadas.
Zaida, please unmute your mic. Mama Zaida.
Thank you very much. I hope we are all inspired to invite our madam, the great leader in PAL Network. And this is Dr. Sarah Ruto. And I just want to say that when you talk about citizen-led assessment, the first thing that comes to your mind is Dr. Sarah Ruto. She has been a unique academician with a great passion in education and especially in the learning of our children. She is the founder of citizen-led assessment in East Africa, the WEZO initiative, and she went further to initiate PAL Network with support from members, and she has been an icon of the citizen-led assessment movement in Africa and globally. We see Dr. Sarah sitting in various global forums, and she has always ensured that the impact of citizen-led assessment is noticed, recognized, and influenced the global agenda to promote the network members that the aspect of quality learning outcomes was included in the SDG 4 as a measure of success in provision of quality education for all. So my pleasure, Madam, to invite you, Dr. Sarah Ruto, to introduce us to the ICAN tool. Karib sana.
Asante sana Mama Zaida, and thank you for the warm and kind words. And I think we are also very fortunate that we actually have the people who bequeathed to us the idea, Rukmini, who is joining in from India. And it makes us this big family that is borderless. And that is why it is a very warm pleasure for me to be here. As I say, good afternoon, East and Southern Africa. and colleagues from all over the world, wherever you might be joining us. The International Common Assessment of Numeracy is a proud moment for us. It is a proud moment because in many ways, as the other leaders have said, it brings a continuation of a history. ICAN unites us because of its common design. It unites us because of its common methodology. It unites us because of the common test items, and all of these are aligned to the UNESCO Institute of Statistics Global Proficiency Syndrome. It is a gift from the South, which can be used anywhere. And that makes us very proud because it is based on our context. And it is one in which, because it is based on our context, has a higher chance of speaking and hopefully listening to some of the challenges that we have had today. And so I am really, really glad in joining the 4 countries and the leaders of Mozambique, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania as they host you, because this is really their meeting and they have organized it and invited all of you. And it brings us together as this family of the PAL network, the People's Action for Learning Network. And the people there is actually not a coincidence. I think the people for me denotes that irrespective of where you sit, whether in or outside government, irrespective of which country you come from, whether from which institution you come from, you have invited yourself into this meeting because you care for education. And so the fact that you have selected to be part of this conversation, for me, means you are part of these people, of the People's Action for Learning Network, because it will take all of us to actually bring these changes that we want to see. And so that is why I'm really thankful to you, the 4 leaders from East and Southern Africa, who have joined again other regional hubs that are taking forth this conversation, because it is a conversation that needs to happen. And it needs to happen because I think all of us are here because we care for education, but we know that for whatever reason, it is not working for everybody as it ought to work. And therefore, because we care for it, then we must do something about it. And ICAN is an example of some of what we do and what we believe in that can actually contribute to this change that we want to see. ICAN will allow us to at least monitor learning, to measure learning, and hopefully, because we are doing this, we are monitoring learning, we will be able to know where the problem is, which we know that children who come from specific regions, specific households, are not learning as much as they do. And ICAN, for us, communicates the fact that we believe that we can, they can, everybody can, if we put a chance to it. Because no child is not able to learn. We can. And that is what ICAN is all about. So while ICAN is a numeracy tool, ICAN also communicates the belief that we have. And would like to invite you to stay on, because just around the corner is ICARE, the reading assessment. So what we will be saying, we can do something because we care. And that is what we believe will unite us as we are thinking about how we can improve education. So with those few remarks, I'd really like to say thank you to the ESSA Hub leaders for having taken the lead in bringing together this meeting so that we can continue the conversation. And I'd like to therefore invite my colleague Winnie, who will take us through ICAN, which started very shortly, just 2 years ago, as part of this longer history, to tell you what we did, how we did.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Good afternoon, everyone. And it's an honor to present the International Common Assessment of Numeracy report, and I welcome you all. Next, please, Usman. So the presentation will start with a bit of a background on what we do, why ICAN was developed, what it measures, and some of the key findings from the first large-scale round of implementation that was completed in late 2019 and early this year. The panel discussion will then bring out the specific Eastern and Southern Africa perspectives and the potential of ICAN for the region. Next, please. As has been introduced by Mama Zaida, the citizen-led assessment approach was born in India in 2005 when Pratham designed an innovative approach to assessing the foundational reading and numeracy abilities of all children, regardless of their schooling status. This assessment is the annual status of education report, ASA in India. The ASA approach to measurement resonated with many people in many countries across the global south who adapted the approach to fit their local contexts. Within the ESA region, the Uwezo assessment was first conducted in Kenya in 2009 and in Uganda and Tanzania in 2010. Mozambique later joined in with Todos Pelas Criancas Mozambique, or TPC Mozambique, in 2016. In 2015, the People's Action for Learning, PAL Network, a partnership of member organizations working across 3 continents, using this citizen-led assessment or CLA approach, was formally established with a secretariat in Nairobi. There are 5 member organizations within the ESA region. Young Love Foundation in Kenya, Uwezo Tanzania, and Uwezo Uganda. Next, please. Next, please, Usman. Yeah, so what makes these assessments relevant for the Global South context? Unlike most other international, regional, and national assessments, citizen-led assessments have conducted in the households to represent all children in the target population, not only those who are regularly attending officially recognized schools. Many children in our countries are still struggling to read, even after several years of schooling. Our CLAs are conducted orally and one-on-one, as this is the only way to understand what children know and can do independently of whether or not they can read. During their schooling, children are expected to acquire a wide array of knowledge, competencies, and skills. To achieve this, they need to build solid foundational skills. Children who do not learn to read or do basic numeracy cannot independently access new content on other subjects. Our CLAs hence focus on foundational reading and numeracy covered in early classes. The assessment tools and processes are simple to use and understand in order to facilitate engagement by a wide range of stakeholders, including parents and community members. And finally, in order to encourage local discussions and explore solutions, CLAs are implemented in collaboration with organizations, institutions, and individuals. The existing country-level CLAs that we already have are nationally relevant snapshots of what children can or cannot do. So the question is, most of us are aware that the SDG indicator 4.1.1 tracks the proportion of children and young people in grade 2 or 3 at the end of primary education and at the end of secondary, lower secondary education, achieving at least a minimum proficiency level in reading and mathematics by 20. To acquire foundational abilities of reading and numeracy in the first few years. We are most concerned about children in grade 2 or 3 within the age group, or within that age group, because it is critical to measure learning early so that corrective action can be implemented in time. To track the progress of these children in early grades, robust regular data learning outcomes is needed over time and across countries. Almost other international and regional assessments are school-based and exclude children who are not in classes 2 or 3. And national assessment programs are based on country-level objectives and standards, and in most cases are not comparable. Hence, the existing cross-national data that we have globally has little relevance to track progress towards SDG 4.1.1 or 3. Next, please, Usman. ICAN built on held up will offer direct comparability of numeracy outcomes across countries. So what does it measure? The minimum proficiency level descriptor for numeracy under SDG 4.1.1 for grades 2 or 3 requires children to demonstrate skills in number sense and computation, shape recognition, and spatial orientation. Icann was developed collaboratively by PAL network members, drawing on the expertise and experience of each member. An assessment framework was developed and is based on a broader understanding and requirements for numeracy in the early grades. Additional strands of basic mathematics encompassing number knowledge, measurement, geometry, and simple statistics in the form of data display were included to increase the scope of the skills assessed in ICAN compared to our previous country-level citizen-led assessments. As a result, 50% tasks on ICAN are based on number knowledge, and the other 50% on geometry, measurement, and data display. Along with the assessment tool, contextual questionnaires were also developed to record information on each child's current schooling status, households, and community characteristics. Next, please. And now we'll show you some sample tasks from the ICAN assessment tool. In the first panel, there are on space, shape, and measurement. And in the second panel, you can see some sample tasks on numbers. We included both simpler and slightly advanced number operations with regrouping. Word problems were also included in the assessment, and this provides more diagnostic information on what children can do and helps track as children acquire new competencies. In the third panel, there are tasks like telling time from the clock, looking at simple data display, the operations, and looking at the calendar to find a specific date. Within the region, the ICAN assessment was conducted in 4 languages: English, Kamba, Kiswahili, and Portuguese. And all these tools are available on the PAL network website. Next, please. Moving on to actual implementation, ICAN was implemented to demonstrate the feasibility of using a common set of tools across different country contexts. So translation, training, data collection procedures were standardized across all participating countries and were based on PAL Network's data quality standards framework, which is informed by international best practices in assessment. ICAN was implemented by PAL members in collaboration with local partner institutions, a practice that has also continued from our traditional citizen-led assessment programs. As a summary of sampling, ICAN was conducted in 13 countries. In this first edition of ICAN, survey coverage was limited to a rural sample, and the scale of the survey was limited to 1 district in each participating country. While selecting this 1 district in each country, it was ensured that statistic assessment data did not identify the district as an outlier in terms of children's foundational numeracy. In each district, 60 rural communities were randomly sampled in order to generate estimates that were representative of the district. And in each rural community, the assessment was administered in 20 randomly sampled households to all children in the age group of 5 to 16 years. Next, please. The map on your screen now shows the geographic spread of ICAN in Eastern and Southern Africa, West Africa, Latin America, and South Asia. Overall, we assessed more than 20,000 children in over 15,000 households across 779 rural communities in these 13 global South countries. In Eastern and Southern Africa, the assessment was conducted in Arusha Rural in Tanzania, Larde in Mozambique, Mubende in Uganda, and Mwala in Kenya. Next, please. The sampling strategy that we just described generates a representative picture only of the sample districts. Therefore, ICAN data from this round cannot be used as a proxy for national estimates. The purpose of this first round of implementation was to understand kinds of comparisons that the use of ICAN on scale facilitates, rather than to compare these specific districts. Next, please. So what are some of the key findings? I will share just 4 quick ones. If you remember, the minimum proficiency level descriptor for numeracy under SDG 4.1.1a expects students to demonstrate skills in number sense and computation, shape recognition, and spatial orientation in class 2 or 3. These charts on your screen show the proportion of children in class 2 to 3, chart 1, and class 4 to 6, chart 2, who are able to do a set of foundational numeracy tasks that proc the minimum proficiency level requirements for SDG 4.1.1a criteria. These charts also identify the class group by when at least 75% or 3/4 of children in a given location were able to do this set of tasks, which is denoted by the green bars. In chart 1, you can see that no location has at least 75% of children in class 2 to 3 who can do numeracy tasks mapped to SDG 4.1.1a criteria. In the 4 districts, the proportion of children in class 2 to 3 who could do this numeracy task ranges from 56% to 10%. Chart 2 shows that for class 4 to 6, there is still a proportion of children who are unable to do the simple numeracy tasks that are expected from children in class 2 or 3. Next, please. As mentioned earlier, I can assess number operation knowledge. So this chart focuses on subtraction. And as you can see, children struggle with subtraction that requires regrouping. In the 4 districts, the proportion of children in class 4 to 6 who could do subtraction with regrouping range from 68% to 20%. Children find it even harder to do word problems for the same operation. Children in class 4 to 6 were able to do a word problem requiring subtraction. Next, please. I can also assess whether children have basic understanding of telling time using the clock and telling the day and date from a calendar. Across all the districts, slightly more children in class 4 to 6 were able to tell the day and date from a calendar as opposed to reading the clock. A third of children in 4 to 6 in Mwala and Mubende cannot easily tell the day and date from a calendar. And we also note that 3 out of 10 children in class 4 to 6 in Arusha rural cannot tell easily time, while this ratio is 7 out of 10 in Larde. Next, please. Since ICAN was conducted in the households, it generated information on enrollment patterns for children aged 5 to 16. That explores enrollment patterns among children in the age group of 6 to 10 years, which is the primary school age in most countries. Despite 2 decades of national commitments to achieving ambitious global goals to ensure all children have access to free quality education, many primary school age children still remain out of school. And as you can see, there's also a great variation across the districts in the types of schools that the children go to. In Arusha rural and Mwala, over 80% of the children attend public schools, while slightly over 50% attend private schools in Mubende. Next, please. As a summary, ICAN is open source and currently available in 11 languages. Most of its tasks are aligned to grade 3 level or lower of the UNESCO Global Proficiency Framework. It is suitable to use in both households and in schools. ICAN is simple and quick to understand, hence easy to scale, especially in low resource settings. As the clock ticks to 2030, the year to ensure that all children have acquired at least the basics. I believe that we need less top-down and more granular measurements of learning to fuel policy and practice change. Considering that COVID-19 has put that this is a critical time to reinvest in foundational learning. PAL Networks ICAN offers as a start. It can provide diagnostic information on what children can do as school starts to reopen. Thank you very much. And now over to you, Mama Zaida.
Winnie, thank you very much for a brilliant presentation. Familiar, and we've heard all about the ICAN tool. For those who have just joined or they joined a bit late, just to mention that we are privileged to have many actors, including the political leaders, the government officials, CSO donors, academicians, education networks, PAL network members, secretariat, our partners and volunteers. And we all have 5 panelists from various countries and the regional bodies in ESA, including the East African community, but also from the international organization, especially UNICEF in the ESA region. I would like now to invite Dr. Mary Goretti Nakabugo to introduce our panelists and to also introduce our friend, our colleague, to give a commentary on this event. Dr. Mary Goretti Nakabugo is the Executive Director for Uwezo Uganda. So, Madame Goretti, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Zaida, and good afternoon, everyone. And thank you so much to Winnie for that very eloquent presentation. It is my great honor now to introduce our distinguished panelists who are going to help us unpack the implications and relevance of the ICAN tool and methodology. When Dr. Sarah Ruto introduced ICAN, she definitely emphasized the potential for this ICAN and its methodology. But now we have people in the field, we have some academics, we have people working closely with government, we have people with global organizations like UNICEF to help us put this into context and see how relevant it can be to the ESA region, but also more broadly. Privileged to introduce as our number 1 panelist, Dr. Maria Ruiza Chicote, who is a lecturer and director of the scientific. She has a PhD in psychology from the University of Sao Paulo in Brazil, and she's a member of the Brazilian Association of Professional Advisors, as well as a member of the Association of the Development of Research in Educational Psychology in Portugal. Dr. Maria Ruiza, if you can put on your video and say hello. Just wave to the audience. Our second panelist is Dr. Richard Shakir, who is a lecturer of education at the University of Dar es Salaam. And he is a lead advisor of the National Task Force on National Assessment Framework for Literacy and Numeracy in Tanzania. He holds a PhD in education sciences, and he has worked very closely with various capacities with the government, including being the lead advisor on the National Task Force for developing a framework for literacy and numeracy in Tanzania. Dr. Shakir, if you could wave to the audience. Our third panelist is Mr. Patrick Kabuyo, who is a teacher and a social worker. He is the National Secretary for Federation of Non-State Education Institutions, FENEI in Uganda. He's also the founding director of the Coalition of Uganda Private Schools Teachers Association. He chairs the Eastern Region Local Government Audit Committee of the Government of Uganda, supervising 29 local governments. At the national level, he's a member of the National Private Schools and Institutions Committee on COVID-19 of the Ministry of Education and Sports in Uganda. And he's also a member of the Technical Committee on the National Teacher Policy for Uganda. Mr. Kabuyo, if you could put on your video to say hello.
Hello.
Thank you. Our second last panelist is Dr. James Otieno Joey, who is the Principal Education Officer at the East African Community Secretariat, which is composed of Burundi, Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, South Sudan, and Tanzania, where he coordinates the development and implementation of regional education programs and frameworks, including harmonization of the education systems, among others. He's also the founding executive director of the African Network for Internationalization of Education, in brief, ANI. He holds a PhD in higher education from the University of Twente in Netherlands. Dr. Joey, if you could wave to the participants. And lastly, we have Mr. Shiraz Shakir, who is the education specialist focused on quality education and learning in the Eastern and Southern Africa Regional Office, ESARO. Shiraz has 16 years of experience working to improve education systems, working in the UK, which is Botswana with UNICEF, and now working across the Eastern and Southern Africa region, focusing on improving learning outcomes. He holds a master's degree in education and international development from the Institute of Education, University of London. Shiraz, if you could wave to the audience. And so we have a distinguished panel to help us comprehend more the potential of this ICAN. I'll begin with you, Dr. Maria Ruiza. If you could kindly put on your video. Dr. Maria Ruiza, in just a minute, if you could give us your quick reflection on your main takeaway from this report.
Sim, muito obrigada a todos os painelistas. Estou feliz em poder estar.
I'm very glad to be in this panel. I consider it to be a report that really shows, it comes up as a platform for reflection. And the key word which to summarize this report for me is evidence. That's the key word for me in this report. Because the result of this report presents to us our evidence that our education in Mozambique and in other countries which we had the ICAN experience shows that still an urgency and a big need for our children. And this need becomes even more challenging in the context of COVID-19, where we see that the children who had little opportunity before now have no opportunity to develop their own capability in numeracy and reading. And so they find themselves in a more challenging position. So it's a tool. It's more than a tool, but it is a great tool. And from its simplicity and application, it can be used very well, and it can be very well applied, and it can be very well extended so that it can contribute or to become very relevant in education systems here in Mozambique. And we were able to see that from the data, we have a lot of concern about our situation in Mozambique. And so we now are thinking about the potential of using this wonderful tool. That is the first thought that I would have in response to this report. And so we see the need to go out and expand and be able to take this instrument even to policymakers, so that together as a community, we can be able to think about how we can empower these children and also improve on their capabilities of these children.
So Dr. Maria Ruiza, just to bring it closer to you as an academic, what kind of potential do you see in using the ICAN tool for teacher education and research in Mozambique?
Sim, conforme eu estava.
Just like I was saying before, I consider the methodology of ICAN as a great tool, and it can bring together teachers. Like I was saying before, there's a real evidence here. The results need to be shared with the teachers so that they can understand the results, and they can also see the categorization of the different levels of children, and so that we can apply very well this tool. It's very important for people to know these results. And on the other hand, it's important for the teachers to know what this tool really represents. And if they understand this tool, there's a higher probability, there are higher possibility that these teachers will be able to develop and organize learning systems, be able to put together wonderful objectives for teaching. And that is what these children really need so that they can be able to develop in different stages. In the academic world, we need to build a community. On one hand, the teachers need to bring their reflections, and they need to understand what the children go through on different levels, and to understand what the capabilities that the children are bringing. Academic world need to create a link so that these reflections that they do have can be consolidated in such a manner that so that this tool can become used in the best way possible, and so that it can have a better contribution to the education process. So
thank you so much.
Com a experiência da comunidade.
To emphasize the contribution of this ICAN tool to the generation of evidence, which evidence can actually also be used by academics for research, but also for teacher education. I'll turn to you, Dr. Shakir. If you could kindly put on your video. Just to remind you, Dr. Shakir is a lecturer at University of Dar es Salaam, and he was a lead advisor for the development of the National Framework for Literacy and Numeracy for Tanzania. So Dr. Shakir, if you could kindly share with us in 1 minute your biggest takeaway from this ICAN report.
Yeah, thank you very much. My big takeaway on this particular ICAN report or the tool is the potentiality of the tool to compare, to provide a kind of comparison that that was largely lacking in these particular in these countries. We had this kind of debates in Tanzania because we know I have worked with Wezo for some time, writing some reports. One of the debate of one of the challenges was, when we were comparing, for instance, the facts from Uganda, from Kenya, from Tanzania, because the curriculum, the variations in terms of curriculum, so people were questioning the validity of this particular tool, the comparisons within Kenya. But having this particular tool, I think is a great achievement for me in terms of comparing the results, because the way I think it has been harmonized, the process of developing this particular tool, so I see it as relevant, timely, and potential in terms of giving us the comparison, because even one of the debate against there are some kind of tools which were assessing numeracy and literacy, of course. And that was the genesis for the country, Tanzania, to develop the national assessment tool, because we also had some kind of assessment, but there are some other organizations that were also doing some assessment. We have also the National Examination Council of Tanzania doing some literacy and assessment. So that was like a puzzle, because sometimes the government was reluctant to accept the results from Wezoga because they are different a little bit from other organizations. So those kind of, it looked like everyone has some kind of issue that was assessing the level of, the benchmarking of these. So the government decided to initiate that particular national assessment tool so as to harmonize. So this ICAN tool for me, I see like a harmonization whereby it will give us the chance now to compare, to see our kids in terms of numeracy at the levels that we think they need to be compared.
So as someone who has been involved in the country's development of a framework for literacy and numeracy, but specifically now the framework for basic numeracy, do you see any ways in which this ICAN tool and methodology can actually
we, as I've said, the university was commissioned, the University of Dar es Salaam, particularly our department, was commissioned by the government in comparison, in support from the GP lens. I think I've heard about that GP lens that was aiming at promoting literacy and numeracy in Tanzania. So we received that particular support, and as a team from the University of Dar es Salaam, we had a task now to invite some people from different organizations that we thought that they can contribute to this particular process. One of the organizations that we involved was Uwezo Tanzania, but also we thought we could get some guys from RTI who are dealing with EGRA and EGMA, but also the curriculum developers from Tanzania Institute of Education. So we developed a team. It's like a reference group, whereby we engaged from and of course we had some guys from the ministries, the Ministry of Education, from the departments responsible for basic education. So we tried to create a team that was a little bit, representative from the guys that are from the organization that are dealing with the assessment, so that we can develop a tool that might have a greater ownership among the stakeholders. And we did that for about 2 years. So we had a lot of consultative meetings, inviting some stakeholders, so at the end of the day, we had to submit the draft report. So we have already submitted the draft report since 2019. Now we are waiting for the government now to give some more way forward or next steps, because we're ready now to submit that particular report. But the way I see this ICAN, I think we still have the room, ICAN still have the room to chip in the process of developing that particular national assessment tool. So this is the potentiality I also see. This is also an opportunity whereby ICAN can chip in and maybe add some issues related to assessment of this numeracy. So the process is still going on, because that particular assessment has not been finalized or approved by the government. So we still have a room to participate and contribute.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. So there's room for the methodology tool to inform
sure.
that process. And I think you've emphasized the issue of this having the power for providing comparative data. So thank you very much. I'll turn to you, Mr. Patrick Kaboyo. If you could turn on your video, and just to remind the viewers and participants, Patrick Kaboyo is the National Secretary for the Federation of Non-Education Actors for state education institutions in Uganda. So, Mr. Kaboyo, if you could kindly come online.
I'm on.
You are on. Oh, okay, thank you. Nice to see you, and good afternoon. So, Mr. Kaboyo, in a minute, what is your takeaway from the report? Main takeaway.
First and foremost, to thank you and say congratulations to the entire team, Mama Zaida, you, Dr. Mugaiso, and the rest.
Thank you.
I take from this report is that to me it's yet another evidence domesticates the global education monitoring report that we have read being produced and delivered by UNESCO. And it's good that UNESCO is part of this work, but also it augments the work that East African countries have been working under the Uwezo framework, but to be strict to the point as derived from the name itself, people action for learning. To me, I think I would love to see an action coming out from the people themselves to address the key issues that this report offers, because when you look at the slides as they were being presented, we see that the report has delved into interrogating the relevance or the efficacy of the nurture and the nature theories or principles, whereby these children that have been assessed are a true reflection of their environment or the homes where they stay. And they cannot be better than the environments, meaning that if good from them,
we are losing you.
Should be fed well, but also, can you hear me now?
Yes, and
I'm saying that for these children to give us what we want, because you cannot give, don't have. They have to be fed well, and the nutrition, which should not start from them, but should start from the mothers who conceive. And that is the environment, and that is the nurture and nature. But also when we look at how the report presents issues, we see that there should be action coming out of the leaders at all levels to interrogate this report has come up with. And maybe also to position our prioritization into the people, investing in people, so that these children are able to give us what we expect of them. Are you able to get me?
Yes.
That
I think what you're really emphasizing most here is the citizen leadership thing. So we're not just about the seed generation of the data, but also the actions that potentially would emerge from this kind of work. Mr. Kabuyo, in a minute or so, I know that you've been actively involved in issues of SDG 4, and I just wanted to use your reflections and maybe experience. Do you see any relevance, or what relevance do you see in this tool and methodology for the monitoring of SDG 4 in relation to numeracy, but also for improving learning outcomes of numeracy in Uganda?
I see this tool as very relevant because it is easy. Its usability is quite flexible, and it creates openness that it is face-to-face interaction. But when it offers a face-to-face interaction, it should be able to interrogate or to cause that interrogation of practices in homes in terms of time telling. Do we see our homes having wall clocks so that these people, the children, can tell time from the clocks hung on the walls? Do we see meals at home being delivered on time? Are there schedules that these children relate to send you to fetch water on the well? They do a spitting on the ground that by the time you return the time. But in terms of the real time now, we need these children to relate to what is being asked to them with as a connection in seeing whether what goes at school interacts with what goes on at home. So the two have to link, and that's the nurture, the environment, and the nature.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the fact that this also the inclusion of those practical and applied tasks is something that is pretty enticing. Thank you very much, Mr. Kabuyo. I'll turn to you, Dr. James Joey. If you could kindly put on your video. To remind you participants, Dr. Joey is Principal Education Officer at the East African Community. Welcome, Dr. Joey.
Thank you so much.
Yes. So, Joey, over to you. In a minute or even less, what is your biggest takeaway from this report or its methodology of ICAN?
Thanks so much, Goretti. And just allow me to take a second to very much appreciate the leadership of the PAL Network for this great work, which is opening up quite a lot of ground. Part of what I take away from this is at the East African community, we have been harmonizing the education systems of the various partner states, but we have not got to the ground where the rubber meets the road, where actually the action happens, and that is where this research has been undertaken. So I think it points to the fact that it is one thing to develop policy and another thing to ensure that that policy brings the results that are desired, also noting the disparities that are between our different partner states and within the countries themselves. And the word that I've mentioned, called disparity, also comes out very clearly out of this study and this report, and also linking it to the SDG 4 that you mentioned with the tenet of leaving no one behind. So we can put a lot of efforts, but it still shows that there is a lot of disparities and segregation based on different aspects. And that leads me to my third point. That means that there is still a lot to be done. A lot of interventions are still needed at different levels. And this can be at the national level, at the sub-national level, at the regional level where we are, at the continental level. And that calls for action. I think at the different levels, it's now quite a multi-level approach, that at the different levels, we have our work cut out, and each of us, the different stakeholders, have to undertake what is desirably theirs. And as one of the speakers already said, it's really a call for action. And this is only in the numeracy scales. What of if at all it was scaled up to other skills levels or skills areas? And so that is in another way to say that it is an opportunity through which we can also look at what is happening in the other learning domains, and it could actually reveal a lot. Finally, it really shows what monitoring what we are doing entails, gathering data, empirical evidence to actually let us know that actually we are doing what we are supposed to do. And that could actually link both practice and policy, and call the different stakeholders, the teachers, the learners, the parents into action, because it cannot be done by only one actor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just lastly, Dr. Joey, in a minute, as someone who is very familiar with the education issues in the East Africa ICAN tool or methodology for generating comparative data, but also maybe to emphasize this for evidence-based policy making, if you see.
I think, thank you so much. The study has already demonstrated that it can actually reveal and contribute to data that can be used for comparative analysis. And that could be really useful for us even at the East African community level, for example, where these resource allocation on areas where we need to do much more training, it can actually mean different things to different people. It can mean something to parents, it can mean something to teachers, it can mean something to learners. So this is quite important. And as I said in my opening remarks, this is actually possibly one of the levels where we don't reach. And I very much appreciate this effort because it begins at the very foundational level where we have the children as young. And if at all we did this at a very high level, which is still okay, but it's really good to get the issues at the root of it. And that gives some room for interventions to be made. And that can be quite, that's a possibility that can also be quite useful for collaboration with the regional organizations, especially in areas where we undertake common regional efforts.
Thank you. So it's not just actually comparative data, but it's also bottom up.
Yeah.
That's very, very critical. Thank you very much, Dr. Joey.
Thanks a lot.
Yes, and now I'll turn to you, Shiraz, Mr. Shiraz Shakir. If you could kindly switch on your video.
I am here.
Oh yeah, I haven't yet seen you on my screen, but good to see you and hear you. So Shiraz, in less than a minute, what is your biggest takeaway from this report or the methodology of ICAN?
Thank you. First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to invite UNICEF to be part of this meeting, and really we're hugely excited with the work that the PAL network and partners have done in producing this tool. Many of my previous panelists have said, I agree with many of the comments on why is it important, the comparable data, the bottom up, these were some of the key points that I wanted to mention. At the heart for UNICEF, the fact that we've got an additional tool to measure foundational numeracy is not to be underestimated. It's for many people in this call, well, that we've got a tool for foundational numeracy that is being built by in that bottom-up fashion with the real engagement with organizations from across the world, produced in 11 languages, is not a small feat, and it's going to be a huge contribution to the education community. I think it's important for colleagues on the call and in this webinar to recognize the challenge of creating a high quality tool such as ICAN. It's clearly many months in the making, many partnerships in the making, lots of pilot testing, and it's wonderful to see that the report has documented that process and shows us that we've got a reliable, valid tool that can at the get-go be used by so many people already, and we look forward for its expansion. Let me stop there and see if you've got any other questions, because these are the things that really kind of chime with us at UNICEF.
So thank you so much. I mean, was music to our ears, the appreciation that this is an additional tool, another tool for measuring foundational numeracy, which has been really shouldn't be underestimated, and we thank you very much for that. So Shiraz, as someone who is really familiar with the two regions, the eastern and the southern region, so if you look at this tool and the methodology, do you see any potential of using the tool itself, but also the methodology for monitoring learning in the two regions, but also for improving the learning of numeracy in the two regions?
Yeah, and that question speaks to the heart of why UNICEF is feeling positive about this. So what UNICEF is, obviously the UN organization that focuses on child rights. I'm focused on education. And what do we know about foundational learning in these two regions, Eastern and Southern Africa? Many children in school but not learning. We talk about, in the context of COVID, increased learning loss and maybe learning gaps widening, inequity widening. And we also talk about, in many of the countries across this continent and Eastern and Southern Africa, at a critical juncture in their history, because of the huge demographic shift that is happening with such a youthful population. There is a huge opportunity for Eastern and Southern African countries, and in fact most African countries, to reap a demographic dividend to transform their economies. But what is the foundation of that demographic dividend? It is actually foundational skills, of which obviously numeracy is one of them. And so when we talk about how can we transform, we've got a kind of 15-year chance in this continent to get foundational skills right, which can build, as the term implies, the foundation of their future learning and the foundation of their future development, personal, community, family, and economic. So we need to invest heavily now to get those foundational skills right. How do we do that? There's increased evidence around the type of programs we need to do that, but we also critically, and this is where this is so vital, we need to equip people with accurate, comparable data about what's happening in their classrooms. And what's great about this tool, is it, and other panelists have talked about this, is it can equip policymakers, it can equip regional policymakers, it can equip district or subnational actors, and even schools, educators and parents, in the endeavor of ensuring that every child gains the access to learning that gives them those foundational skills. And this is the critical point. We need these tools. Many of you will know that UNICEF has a tool as part of its mix, the Multiple Indicator Cluster Survey on foundational literacy and numeracy. We're really pleased to see this tool and looking forward to the ICAN tool that goes a bit deeper on numeracy and literacy. But with these tools, these can provide high quality information that allows us to do a number of things, allows us to inform systems about where we are now, allows us, as we, UNICEF, governments, World Bank, USAID, many other partners, non-governmental and civil society organizations across the region work to improve foundational skills. As we do that, this tool will help us know what our progress is and help us course correct, and course correct in quite a granular way. This is a tool that tells us a lot about the numerous skills that learners have and haven't gained. And it's that level of detail that is so critical to ensure that as we make the investments, make the intervention, ensure that we get kids learning, that we know we're on the right track, and that we make the difference for all learners in the regions.
Thank you very much, Raz. I mean, if indeed, and it's true that foundational skills are very important, and in a way they are missing in our region, and numeracy is at the center of this. You've emphasized the fact that we need a tool that can enable us to measure and tell the progress that we have made, where we are. How can we know where we want to go if we don't know where we are? So thank you very much that you appreciate the fact that ICAN tool can provide this granular data to inform systems, policies, but also classroom practice. So thank you very much. I'll now turn to the audience, and I thank you very, very much that you have been giving us quite a number of questions, and keep them coming. We may not answer all of them now, but the answers will keep coming. So panelists, we have got a number of questions here. And let me just read them quickly here, very, very, very quickly. I can see Dr. James Orick is asking, do the panelists agree that children's relative difficulty with verbalized subtraction problems compared to form ones shows that teachers are neglecting mental arithmetic and the language of mathematics in general? He hasn't addressed it to anyone, but I hope one of you can pick it up. There's another question here from Gertrude Namubiru from NCDC, and she says she would like to know the strategies in place to advise or help governments to do something to improve the situation. So she's saying that what ICAN tool is doing is good, and that we need to improve the learning outcomes of numeracy. So she wants to know if there are strategies in place to advise governments to do something about this. And Dr. Leah Skoyo from Uganda is thanking Power Network, and she's wondering how differences in curricula across the participating countries was taken care of in developing that tool. Again, this is addressed to all of us, and I hope one of the Power Network colleagues will actually help to answer this. Also, panelists can try to tackle it. So there's a question here from Dr. Ezati, who is saying the use of the tool will provide data from different countries that educationists across the continent can use to debate and forge ways of improving education. It will ease collaboration on education issues in the different countries. Thank you very much. Having used the tool, what were the key challenges of using the different countries? Again, that is posed to us as Power Network. Let me just turn a few questions also which were posted in the chat room. One comes from Kudakwashen Kuba from Zimbabwe. And he is saying this project is very effective as from our statistics. My question is, how do you deal with children who have a proficiency level above average, but are somehow disadvantaged age-wise, e.g. class 2, who is more than proficient for their age? Can they be skipped to the next class level? So those are deviates, positive deviates. They are above average. Can they be skipped to another level? We have Maria Farinha, I guess from Mozambique, who is studying in Mozambique, average communities regarding school outcomes. I hope, Amando, you are at hand to respond to this question, which is particularly asking, referring to Mozambique. And another one is still on Mozambique. Then maybe for now, lastly, is Beket Tesif from Ethiopia, working in Gambela Teachers College. His question is, why did you not consider Ethiopia in this project? There are many children who need educational support. And to answer that, this was a pilot, small scale. Hopefully in future, we would expand ICAN to Ethiopia. As Zaida explained at the beginning, it started small in India, grew up in East Africa, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania. We are now 14 countries. Hopefully we'll go beyond the 14 countries in the future. So over to you, panelists. In the remaining maybe 5 minutes, each one of you could take 1 minute and you can address any of the questions that have been raised, anyone which you have picked up, and then the rest of the questions we promise as Power Network. We have taken note of them and we shall offer some answers after the webinar. So I'll begin with you again, Dr. Maria Ruiza. In 1 minute, if you could respond to any of the questions, but also give your concluding remark.
Sim, muito obrigada.
Thank you very much. I'm going to just respond generally to all the questions. And one of the questions was about sometimes the teachers not focusing a lot on the aspect of learning for the children. It's a question that we wouldn't have a very easy answer. Learning is a process, and it's a very complex process. And when it comes to numeracy, when it comes to reading, these are processes, very complex processes. And the reason that it's not just about understanding content that the teacher passes on. It also has a lot to do with the methodology. And so you have to motivate children, amongst other things. And you have to also think about the family context. You have to reach the student. You have to expose a child very early to numbers, to reading exercises, and so on. ICAN tool offers us this opportunity to improve the learning by improving processes. And so the teacher who has a full responsibility. It has a lot to do with the collaboration and the participation of parents and many other people who can be exposed to this instrument, such as ICAN. Now, talking about final words, I'd like to thank all of you and to say that all of us, we do have this commitment to expand the use of this tool, because to me, skills and numeracy and reading in childhood, it is a way for us to invest in the future. It is a way when children are empowered, we improve their capacity to be able to understand, and they even to understand their own world. So for us, we can just provide the tools. We can build it towards a better world, So for me, ICAN as a tool, it can be, because there's a possibility to change the future, to helping children from very early to get the abilities to be able to be conditioned and to create a proper foundation for a better future, and so that they can have a much more solid future, and to be so that they can be able to have a personal success, and in that way we can also improve the whole community, the whole community successful.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maria Riza. So ICAN tool is not only a data collection tool, it can also be used as a teaching and learning tool. So turn to you, Dr. Richard Shakir. If you could answer any of those general questions that were asked and give your parting shot.
Thank you. I think one of the questions was the involvement of the countries, I mean the government, in developing this particular tool. But also the other question is how the tool is aligned to the curriculum in the respective. From my experience with WESO, perhaps the PAL network might have adapted that one or learned from that. I think the engagement with the government is critical, and it's quite important for not only for sharing the results, but also for the tool development itself, but also during the assessment process, during the dissemination workshops. I think this will create a kind of ownership, but also trust in terms of the results that will be given out from the assessment. So I believe PAL Network has worked with the government closely, tried to align with the curriculum developers or curriculum of the respective countries, and they will continue working closely with the government, accepted by all the stakeholders for the results to be used or to be implicated in the policies and into practice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think you emphasize the issue of the relationships with government, which we have always been doing, but there is even need more than ever before to do that. And now that we have the proof of concept with this tool, certainly I think governments and other actors will have more faith and confidence to engage even more. So thank you very much, Richard. To turn to you, Mr. Kaboyo, in a minute, if you could answer to any of the questions and give your parting shot.
Thank you, Goretti. A gentleman asked about those children that seem to be genius to him or are better off, but tool should situate very profoundly the challenges we have in our schooling system across East Africa, that if a child is super genius, the system excludes that person, but it looks at this other one with disability as the one that it attends to. And we find that those that are super genius are either classified as hyperactive, or they have issues or disorders because of the insufficiency that teachers have. And for us to be able to situate this tool better, we also need to link it with SDG deliverable on quality teachers, because whatever I want to see is going to be delivered if quality teachers are the ones at the center of instructing these children. But also we know that 2030 is cycles. So by the time we open our eyes, we shall find that the 5 years are gone, the other 5 years are also gone, and we are left almost in the same situation as we were for SDG. Sorry, for Millennium Development Goals. Therefore, we have to come up with an action-packed strategy to escort our good report to ensure that action is demanded, and is demanded as a matter of urgency, because we do not have time. I want to thank you so much, the colleague panelists and organizers of this very important milestone. It leaves a record that we are moving in the right direction.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for addressing that very critical question, which could have an implication as we focus so much on those left behind. Do we have mechanisms actually of? So thank you so much. I'll turn to you, Dr. Joey, for your final response to any of the questions and for your final remark in a minute.
Yeah, Goretti, I note that you just have 3 minutes to go, so I would love to be very brief. I wanted to relate to the same question about the role of governments, because that's where I actually work. And I think there is a strong contribution that civil society organizations can make in terms of influencing how governments work. And we need to open those spaces for civil society organizations and even research organizations to engage with the policy making agencies and even regional bodies like us, and also to play a key role in advocacy and awareness creation. The issue on data, these are the 2 questions I wanted to respond to. Mining data the same way that Pearl Network has done now is very critical, and also coordinating the data is disjointed, and stakeholders being aware of the essence of data, the value of data. I could have commented on the case that has been presented there of a kid in grade 8, but still not able to read or write, which can be maybe a case of some abnormality with the child or a very terrible crisis in that system, if at all the kid is normal. Due to time, I would like to stop it there, and thank you so much, all the participants and also the colleague panelists for this opportunity. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. So the importance of data mining, but also harmonizing the data that could be disjointed. I think ICAN and the Pearl Network can play a very big role in the region in doing that. So Shiraz, lastly, in 1 minute, responding to any of the questions and giving your final remark.
Thank you very much, Goretti, for this. Reach to the end of the session. There was a few questions that I just want to put one reflection on, really. There was a question around, does the data say that teachers may not be focusing enough on mental arithmetic? There was another question about teacher training. There was another question of, I think it was something to do with what do we do with the data? For me, rather than answering those questions, it just demonstrates how powerful this tool is. The whole value of creating this data understand and question it in terms of what is it meaning for system improvement, what is it telling us about how we need to, what we might need to focus on teacher training, and reflections for groups of teachers who are thinking about improving their foundational numeracy pedagogies. What is it telling them to say, am I focusing on the right thing? Am I using maths language enough to be able to enable children? I don't think it's for someone in my position to say this is what the data is saying, but that's the power of the tool. And my final reflection is just to obviously thank all the partners involved in this, appreciate the creation of this tool, and really we look forward to working out how the tool can be used at national scale. Really interested to understand how we can both in terms of deploying the tool nationally, providing us with high quality data. And also one of the great strengths of the Pearl Network is how to make it, the data speak to multiple audiences and therefore used by multiple audiences. That's what we look forward to in the future.
Thank you very much, panelists. I think you've emphasized the issue of the need for evidence. I think no doubt that this tool and methodology is providing more evidence for measuring progress that we are making towards attaining the foundational skills of numeracy. One of the questions that came up was how we consider the different curricula in the different countries. So when it comes to foundational numeracy, there are some skills which are as foundational is, they're quite universal. Those are actually stipulated in SDG 4.11. So we looked at those skills that any child all over the world under SDG 4.1 would be expected to have at that age, within that age group that was presented. So thank you very much, our panelists, and all of you, the participants, for the questions that you have raised. The answers will keep coming from the PAL network, but the issue of evidence, comparability of data, the bottom-up issue that Dr. Joey emphasized, the issue of the citizen-led nature of this data that is collected, but also the citizen-led action that might emerge from the evidence that is coming up from this are things that are really takeaways from this panel. So we shall continue to engage, and we look forward to your further engagement and interrogation of the data that this ICAN tool can produce. Thank you very much, all of you. And thank you very much, panelists, once again. So I hand back over to Zaida.
Thank you very much, Madam Goretti and the panelists. Thank you for a great session. And we have really learned a lot from the discussion, and mostly the importance of the ICAN tool, which can be used to generate data that can influence policy decision-making and also prioritization in the planning, but also on resource allocation, and most important, as a tool which can be used in the region, nationally, but also globally, to measure the progress on learning in numeracy, but also the achievement of SDG 4. We thank you very much, Dr. Shakir, for the comment on strengthening the relationship with the government, and especially to generate buy-in of other initiatives in the assessment, and also for ownership. And that may give a way to see how ICAN can influence the assessment at the regional level and national level as well. Thank you very much. And now I would like to give you back to Goretti to invite Mr. Ian to make a comment, and before we proceed to the closing of the session. Over to you, Goretti, again.
Okay, so thank you very much, Zaida. And I would like to introduce Ian. Is he online? So we're delighted to have Ian Atfield, who has been a friend, a colleague, a critical friend of the citizen-led assessment movement and action, but also the PAL network, to give some observations in 2 to 3 minutes of his main takeaway. And Ian Atfield is with the UK Foreign, Commonwealth and Government Office, FCO, which was formerly the Department for International Development. So Ian, you're most welcome, and we're delighted to have you.
Thank you, Goretti, and welcome to all my friends and colleagues in Africa, in the mother continent. So first, I would say that yes, there was a big change for us last week in the United Kingdom with DFID being merged with the Foreign Office. So we all are now working with FCDO, or out of the various high commissions and embassies in Africa. And very much the 12 years of girls' education is something which is really matters to the UK. And we really see the PAL network being a major contributor to that movement around Sustainable Development Goal 4. It's been a real pleasure to see how much the PAL network has evolved and grown over the past decade. And I was fortunate enough to meet many of you at the 2019 conference that was hosted where I'm normally based in Kathmandu in Nepal. PAL has really done a lot of painstaking work actually do what ICAN, as obviously is the topic of the new assessment that's being launched today. And I think that question of scalability, and I really think that what the ICAN study has shown that it is possible to scale and to compare globally, which is really some of the things I was engaging with the PAL network a few years ago about their 5-year strategic plan. So it's great to see that come forward. Earlier back, I was working in Tanzania, seeing a WASO scale around East Africa. And so really this continual evolution of the PAL network is really pleasing to see. We are very aware that obviously this is a very difficult time for the whole world as the seismic forces of the COVID-19 pandemic affects and deepens the global learning crisis in Africa and across the world. And I really want to encourage all PAL members to accelerate the pace and to be able to, both conduct more learning assessments in these new and difficult conditions where children and classes cannot happen easily, and many children and communities are struggling with the most basic needs of food and protection, which are obviously prerequisites for learning. There's some really great work going on. I'm really pleased to learn about the work of the Usawa agenda in Kenya, which has also found new information about the ability to access online learning tools, which I think will be also an increasingly important area for the PAL network's journey in terms of using digital tools to both conduct assessments, to support learning, and to really spread information about what children can and cannot do to influence policymakers and education and school leaders at both the local, district and national policy level. Coming back about why is the ICAN so important? Well, for the first time, we can actually map systematically onto the global proficiency framework levels that have been put together through the UNESCO Institute of Statistics. While often we don't like to be compared, and many leaders will always question league tables and comparisons, they are a really powerful form of accountability. Why is it that for example, a child can do 2-digit arithmetic in where in the continent? I know time is short and we're running over, so I'll just really focus on a couple of challenges. As I said, I like to be considered the critical friend to the PAL network. There's a lot of talk about building back better from the COVID pandemic, and I think that part of the PAL network's mission is to consider how they can be part of that and to help to diminish what the World Bank has termed learning poverty. So I think that, of course, on the back of ICAN, everybody will be great to see when ICAL, a common assessment for literacy, will come along, how it can bind some of the best aspects of the EGRA assessments and to improve the inter-rater reliability and other measurements that really can drive home to an international audience that these are credible and scalable tests. And then finally, I think I'd be thinking about the work of Usawa, how can we more use of digital tools? Because the more digital tools can be used at scale and at cheap cost, the more you'll get that explosion of the use of data metrics in all directions. So there's just a couple of ideas. We know that society was extremely inequitable, and more learning divide and more inequity is coming from the COVID framework. So I really would say that the UK supports this drive of the PAL network around ICAN, and we look forward to much better work coming. Back over to you, Gramati, Sarah, and Zaida. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ian, for very critical but also constructive comments. And most important, the issue of scaling up the ICAN tool is within our critical forward to establish a powerful tool for fair comparison of children learning outcomes across countries, regions, but also globally. And we take the challenge. Thank you very much for introducing the iCare tool and the use of technology in assessment, but also we note the feasibility of using technology for the marginalized children. Thank you very much for all those comments. And now we are approaching towards the end of the session. Lee from Mozambique. Armando is a senior advisor at TPC Facilidad, Mozambique, and he is a pioneer of citizen-led assessment in Mozambique. So Armando, please welcome for the closing remarks.
Obrigado, Mama Zaida.
Thank you, Mama Zaida. I hope you can hear the translation. I don't know if you can hear me. I'm only going to make final comments. First of all, to talk about the consensus that we had during this important event. And secondly, I would like to present the point of action going forward in the future in accordance to rather following the participants' presentations. We do have a consensus on about 5-6 things. First of all, this tool uses evidence as well. Evidence that is produced by the citizens, which can help to understand the situation of where we are in different countries. The second consensus that we have is that it's very simple. It's a simple tool that can be used by the citizens, just to collaborate people, teachers, young people, members of different communities. It's a tool, very simple and accessible to all different levels. The third thing that we agree about is that this tool has the potential to bring teachers, parents, policymakers, and government to the same table of dialogue in order to improve education. This potential needs to be taken advantage of, used properly. Fourth point that we agree about is it offers us our opportunity to compare data. We countries do have different contexts, and it helps to compare progress between one country and another, so that we can make the government more responsible in the improvement of education. Nothing else that I was able to capture under the consensus is that the use of this tool is a way to domesticate sustainable development goals to the lowest level, and that way we can continue taking small steps. We improve the learning process for our children. Finally, this tool also helps us to understand existing disparities in different contexts, and it helps us to be able to understand the disparities. That way we can be able to take action which are aligned with the different contexts and situations. Besides, about 5 to 6, we now need to pass on to the call to action. Well, that is, each and every one of us needs to, we hope that after having this report, we hope that there will be action by the citizens to improve the quality of education. It is good to present evidence, but it is it's even more important that the citizen takes a leadership role to improve the process of education in rather where they are located. The second call to action has to do with the implications that data has in our analysis of our situations. The data on the learning, and it needs to help us to know how we're going to use resources, to understand how the resources for education are being used, and that way we can be able to establish the priorities as we use these resources. The fourth call to action, it has to do with expansion. We already saw that some countries have different processes. we need to think about how all of us should be able to expand the use of these tools and to get out to more countries. And even in countries where work was carried out, we need to go beyond those countries and reach more regions and countries. And finally, final call to action, we need to use the data from this study to equip leaders, people in government, parents, teachers, so that all of us together, we can find solutions so that our children can be able to learn better. When we started off, Dr. Sarah said that the most important thing that brings all of us together is the fact that we do have an interest in improving the education process. And this instrument is a tool, a very important tool, in order for us to be able to come to the table and so that we can also work together to improve the education process. I'd like to finish with my final words, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you, each and every one of the participants, and each and every one of the panelists, and the Secretariat of PAL Network, as a hub leadership, all those who directly or indirectly contributed to make this program a success. To each and every one of you, thank you very much. Asante sana. Thank you. In different languages, thank you. And vamos a falar a próxima vez. Thank you very much. Obrigado.
Penso que com essas palavras damos por terminado.
Those words, I declare the end of this meeting.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Armando, and goodbye, everyone.